So we just happened to be in Paris, France. We were looking for some historical sites having to do with our upcoming documentary, and we ended up running smack dab in the middle of these riots and protests of the Gilets Jaunes in Paris that have been ongoing for well over a month.
Revolution.
I've never been to Paris before. This was the first time I had ever been there. The first full day of being there. And we heard that the subways were closed and all the major tourist attractions were closed and everybody was warning us away from the city center. So we thought, well, we'll rent some of those little scooters that they have on the street corners that you can just pick up and drop off wherever you want. And we'll just go around everything to get the locations we needed to film. And so that didn't end up happening. What ended up happening was we rode straight into a riot/protest on a scooter.
On vacation or for work?
Yeah, we had heard that they were closing down, all the major tourist sites from the Eiffel Tower to the Palace of Versailles. But we weren't really going to those places, so we thought we would have a chance to sort of go around everything, but instead we just got caught up in the middle of it, really.
It was the weirdest thing. It was like riding up on a movie set, because they closed down not just all the tourist attractions, but they closed down all of the businesses in the city center too.
I just think it's weird how everything's closed in the middle of a Saturday. Everything's
all the stores are closed. All down the street. Everybody's turning the lights off. People are in here freaking out. There's people in here that work here. They turned all the lights off. Yeah, it's an interesting way to come see Paris. It's a really weird thing for a Saturday afternoon to arrive in a huge city like Paris and have everything be like a ghost town, and just have hundreds of people in yellow vests hanging out on street corners and marching around.
It was totally surreal, and we were just out of place.
I think by closing down all the businesses like that, because I've never seen them do that for protests or anything here in America. They'll put up barricades and stuff, guardrails, but they don't usually shut down everything. We don't have any kind of face protection, dude.
I know that.
Cops are marching them back. They're marching them back. I think we turned down the wrong street, dude.
Google said this was the way.
Thanks, Google.
By shutting everything down.
Some areas of central Paris looked like a ghost town this morning with streets deserted.
Pretty much everything. All they did was just leave it open for more people protesting, because at that point there's nothing else to do. Everything's closed. So there's nothing, it's a Saturday, most people aren't at work anyway, but the people that would have been, they're not, because everything's closed. It's just really, it's like a backwards way of them promoting this protest, really.
Smoking out the alley.
Seemed to be almost the only thing anyone was talking about anyway. But yeah, it was just weirdly, eerily shut down.
Everything we heard driving up on this before we got there was all about how this is the next French Revolution. This is the redo of the 1968 protest. This is going to be so bad. It's going to be the worst thing ever. But what we ended up seeing mostly was just a lot of angry people walking around. And then riot cops shooting tear gas at them.
Nobody's even doing anything. Why are they tear gassing people when no one's actually doing anything?
Did you see that by chance? Probably better you didn't. Yeah.
What, are they just retaking the street? They don't want people in this street? They're just going to push everyone back?
Let's get back.
This is insane, man.
Yeah, let's see if Luke got back.
I ran before it got me. It didn't get me.
Alright. I'm okay. And the stage was very much set for that police confrontation. They really wanted to put the protesters in their place and have a show of force. And they had published in the papers, I think they had as many as 90,000 cops and military throughout the country. There's at least 10,000 in the city, and everywhere they had shields and helmets and a lot of use of tear gas, which we saw firsthand.
What happened?
Everyone's running. They threw something in the street.
What is that?
Tank.
Tank?
And that was who you saw interacting with police, kicking windows, throwing down motorcycles. And setting cars on fire. There was a lot of cars set on fire.
There was a lot of cars set on fire, but it didn't make a lot of sense because there were so many cops everywhere, and there was a helicopter overhead that was monitoring the crowd from above and radioing down. And somehow these cars would get set on fire, and they were allowed to burn for a really, really long time with nobody doing anything.
And then eventually the fire truck would show up and put out the fire.
Which is ridiculous because they knew exactly where it was and what was going on. Like I said, there was a helicopter overhead, so they could pretty much see everything that was going on from a bird's eye view. Overall, it really seemed like they were promoting this more than trying to shut it down.
And I think ultimately what we could figure out about what was it about and why people were there, people are really angry because they're being pushed to their limits, they can't afford the cost of living, they're angry about the fuel tax.
I think since the crisis, the economic crisis, people are more poor because every price is increased, as energy. Yeah, and it's very difficult for us today because a lot of people can't finish their month. French are paid every month, so we are one wage for 1 month, and at the 20th of the month, some people can't eat. Yeah.
It takes on a very familiar pattern with other protests we've seen, such as the 1999 WTO protest in Seattle, where the protests are diminished and delegitimized by rioters and anarchists who break private property and give a pretext for the police reaction, for the police clampdown against the people. And in particular, there's the optics and the image of broken glass, spray-painted slogans, destroyed property, burning cars, and things like this that really give people a distaste for the dissent and opposition, and ultimately sort of give credence to the establishment and the ruling entities. And it really seems like the powers that be have used the images and the optics of the destruction in their favor. I mean, just think about the power it gives them to have a reason to crack down.
None of the protesters, the legitimate protesters down here, want any of this kind of action.
They can't just say these are nonviolent protesters, there's no reason for the police response. They can cut right to the images of the worst of it and give a direct reason for cracking down and even for using force against people in the streets.
More clashes with other protesters telling them to stop because they're giving everyone a bad name.
These are protests that have shaken France.
In Paris, violent clashes erupted between police and protesters for the third straight weekend.
Once again, we witnessed scenes of chaos, destruction, and anger here on the streets of Paris.
Paris police are bracing for more violent protests this weekend.
French authorities are still removing burned out cars, cleaning up broken glass, and scouring graffiti from buildings on the famed Champs-Élysées Avenue and other Paris landmarks that were trashed by protesters over the weekend.
Some protesters set cars and barricades on fire and vandalized luxury stores.
The French capital suffered the worst unrest for more than a decade, with homes burnt, shops looted and clashes with police. Here, rioters placed fireworks inside a police car.
Right now, French officials are considering a state of emergency to prevent more deadly unrest.
It looks like Europe is unraveling.
It is.
It looks like Europe is unraveling.
Most French people say they support the cause of the protesters, lower taxes and better services, but not the violence.